Hello. I'm so glad you're here. My name's Leonard Maltin, and I'm here with the happy assignment of interviewing the three stars of this show. So without any further ado, let's bring up Vera Farmiga, Nestor Carbonell, and Freddie Highmore. Not bad, huh? I mean, really and truly. But I want to start with you, Vera, because I think it seems as if it starts with you, because at the beginning of episode 1, season 1, of course we meet both of you, but you are a character that we never saw in the movie. Not really. And this, of course, is inspired by Mr. Hitchcock's classic Psycho. And I wonder how the people who approached you set this up for you. What did they tell you?
You know, we did see very little of her, but what we did see of her created some bad juju for me that I had to cut through. And, you know, what do we see? We see a corpse, a skeletal corpse with a really bad hairpiece. Whether it was her own hair or he scalped her, who knows, a wig, and an expression like this. And from all that, it's easy to infer that she was bizarre or wicked. And I think how it was pitched to me was that we were going to tell not a story of hate, but a love story, a genuine love story between a mother and son. And that we were going to debunk the bad mother theory, that, oh, there's something wrong with him, it's her fault. Mm-hmm. She raised him wrong, or she gave him bad genetics, it's all her fault. Mm-hmm. And instead of, and so I think our mission was to tell that love story, and in many ways a fairy tale. It was a beautiful fairy tale, the way we approached it. That begins with, you know, once upon a time there was a warrior named Norma who, in order to save the beautiful Princess Norman, had to confront that monster, and in our case, madness. Mm-hmm. And it took her a long time to do it, and to confront a lot of things, not only his mental fragility, and the circumstance of, you know, his neurology, but had to confront her past and her baggage. And but bottom line is, we were going to be telling a love story.
And did you have any hesitation in saying yes? Did you have any concerns?
I didn't. I didn't have any concerns, because by 3 pages in, I could tell that this was going to be a kaleidoscope for me. Like a kaleidoscope of lady greats. The character felt very vintage to me. And maybe it's because we were ripping off Hitchcock in the 40s, but within the sort of the elements of this character were, I don't know, she just felt like a compilation of lady greats. You know, and things I didn't even imagine would be given to me to portray. The musicality, Rita Hayworth's musicality. And, you know, and the melodrama, and the comedy, and the Carol Burnett shtick, and, you know, the Lauren Bacall's ballsiness. I mean, Norma's claws would come out like a bona fide MMA fighter, you know, and all that. She was so multifaceted, and I could tell that. They gave us 3 episodes. Well, they gave me 3 episodes initially to determine, and by page 3 I was in.
And how was it presented to you? We're glad you said yes. I speak for those poor people who just applauded, and myself. How was this presented to you, Freddie? Now, you had a different situation, because you were inheriting a character who is so indelibly identified with one actor. It's not like playing, every generation has a new Hamlet, and, you know, many people have played, you know, multiple characters, and, you know, and it's the right person for the right time and all of that. But we all know Anthony Perkins, made this singular mark on that character. How did they present this to you in a way that made you feel, I can do this and I want to do this?
I mean, I guess first of all, knowing that Vera by this point had already signed on to it was a big part of the decision. Wouldn't be so bad to work with her, and then here we are. The decision was the right one. I guess I didn't really. People always ask that question. What did you feel fearful of taking it on? But I never really did. I didn't give it a huge amount of thought. I think it was there on the page. You read it and you recognize the certain traits that could be attributed to that brilliant Anthony Perkins's brilliant performance way back when. But at the same time, it, perhaps by dint of its contemporary setting, also felt far enough removed from it that it wouldn't be necessarily bound by what came before. And I also thought that there was such a long way to go before he would get to that point of being in Psycho that I didn't really have to think about it for the time being. That maybe we'd get there one day, and I guess here we are. But it wasn't something that was of immediate concern. And then in terms of preparation, I guess I would always, rewatch Psycho before every season and try and, use certain things that Anthony Perkins did. I keep giving him a plural name in order to infuse Norman with those qualities. But at the same time, there was always a freedom that we were making our own show. And as time went on, I think more and more that became true. That we found these characters and the journey of Bates Motel became its own journey as we saw this season, as opposed to something that was intrinsically tied to Psycho.
Now, whenever a new show starts, somebody, usually the creator and a producer and a writer, create a Bible for the show. So everybody knows, who's who, what's what happened before that you ought to know, and where it's headed. Do you know how far ahead they planned this show? I mean, it's because so much happens in season 4 and season 5 that we couldn't really we couldn't be expected to anticipate as viewers. And I wonder if they let you in as actors on sort of their long-range ideas. I mean, did you know when you were hired, Nestor, to play the sheriff that you'd wind up in a romantic relationship with Norma?
Not entirely. I remember, Carlton did mention, he sent me the first 6 episodes. No, I only got 3, but... but by page 2 I was in. No, but he
and you had worked with Carlton before, of course, on Lost.
I had a great experience of having to work with Carlton on Lost and
having to work with him.
So getting to. But I think after he called me, and I was thrilled, of course, at the chance of getting to work with him again. And like Vera, I read that the first bunch of scripts and I was in right away. I was up all night reading them. To your question, I didn't. I had some broad strokes. Carlton did say, look, there's not much on the page in the first season for you, but just know by episode 10, which you haven't read, that something that you do will sort of catapult your involvement with the Bates in a different direction, and potentially, he said, you may end up with Norma. So it was never set in stone, but I think the idea was planted, but never to that extent. So I sort of took a leap and then started working with Vera, and and I think things started to happen. Just we found stuff in the material that was sort of subtext to work with. That was fun.
Some people look at Psycho as a great horror movie, and some people think of it as a great black comedy, grand guignol, whatever you want to call it. How do you see it?
Very much more in the vein of the black comedy. I don't think it is a horror show. I know it has to be or not has to be, but that it's marketed that way, and that it's it in some ways, you watch a advert for it and you think, oh, it's going to be killing people, and of course there's that intrigue, but at the same time, I think what sustained it is the humor of the dark romance between Norman and Norma that someone else tried to get in the mix of, but but ultimately, no.
I will say one thing, Leonard. At the beginning of this season, spoiler alert, 5th season, I was led to believe that, I did know that I was actually I was going to end Norman's life at the end of the series. But strangely enough, as the year progressed, Freddie found himself in the writer's room more and more, and everything suddenly changed.
And we'll get to that in just a minute. I'm going to ask you about your contributions.
But no, the humor. Yes.
So is it fair to say you played him you play him very realistically, but was your tongue in cheek at the same time?
I think you're aware of the humor, and I think this is what Vera did from the very beginning, and was maybe the first to sort of spot it and dig it out way back when in the pilot, was the necessity for that relief, and not to shy away from those moments that are inherently funny. I mean, in season 5, it's a very funny concept that this guy is living alone in his house, but he thinks that he's living with his mother. And they're just having this imaginary conversation, and he's eating pretend food. And at the same time, the conversations about that can't be looking for the next punchline. Mm-hmm. But you're certainly aware of the humor behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember Psycho being funny. I remember him being charming, and that was the key. What drew you in and bemused you to his character. I thought we were much funnier than Psycho, but I wanted that, and that was a request of mine. I really wanted to. Yes, we were telling a story where both of the people were coping with mental illness and a history of abuse and neglect, but I wanted to make that portrayal even more full-bodied and portray them, and see them as in the fullness of I think taking what I took from Anthony Perkins was that charm, and that's something that I borrowed, and I said, okay, that's a good in. What do what allures us? What really what do we find attractive about characters? And more often than not, it's their charm, it's their joie de vivre, it's their passion, passionate quality. We love passionate people. Passionate people are very attractive. Joyful people are very attractive. They're tapping into something divine. And I wanted Norma's divinity to come from cheerfulness, an indomitable will to persevere, and to dust herself off and try again, and humor, and we I think also it's funny. All of that stuff, I don't think they did anticipate our characters coming together romantically. Camaraderie on set, I feel like the creative winds just blew us into this tumbleweed that worked. And things emerge. Comedy emerged where there wasn't. And it's even funny, these micro adjustments from script to script, depending on what writers wrote which episodes. Some episodes were goofier than others. Some had a darker comedy. Some had a more a more broad comedy. And so that was fun, also navigating, depending on who wrote that episode.
Mm-hmm. Nestor, you were the first of this ensemble to go behind the camera and direct an episode. What was that like, working with, you're barely, are you even in that episode that first one?
Actually, the first one I did, I was in it quite a bit. So that was, yeah. That was
I watched the second one.
Oh yeah, the second one.
And-
Yeah, I was in it a fair bit. The last one I wasn't in at all. No, the last one because I got the chance to to direct Rihanna, and because given the schedule and how sort of tough that was, I was written out of that episode on purpose. So at least that's what I was told. But, yeah. But
I thought it would be better that way.
You thought it would be by the writer himself. So yeah,
I had nothing to do with it.
no, not at all.
So how did that come about?
So it came about, actually, Vera, it started with Vera. You know, we would work on scenes and, you know, we would play around and I think one day you just said, you know, you should direct. And it was sort of the furthest thing from my mind. I've written, I've been a frustrated writer since I can imagine, but since I can remember. But Vera brought that up and kept bringing it up. And then one day I met with Carlton on some other issue and I sort of brought up the notion of, you know, potentially shadowing Tucker Gates, our amazing producing director. And he thought it was a good idea. And he said, you know, if someone drops out, would you be willing to step in? And I sort of foolishly said, sure, you know, and someone dropped out. So I had to sort of take a crash course in you know, in directing. The only thing I directed was my kids on an iPhone. That's about as much experience as I have. So seriously. So and then Vera gave me great advice. She said, don't pretend to know everything, because you won't, and you don't. So just avail yourself of everyone's talents, and thankfully, I was surrounded by an enormously talented crew and cast, and
people that you knew, and
people that I knew
working
that were
with, on a regular basis.
Exactly, who were rooting for me. So you know, it was such a wonderful and incredible experience, and I was the first one to get that chance. Obviously, Freddie did as a writer, and later as a director, and Max as well.
So Freddie, were you inspired by Nestor's initiative to?
Yes, I was. No, I actually like Nestor. I really like him. No, I think both Max and I getting to direct this season, we were incredibly fortunate Nestor had done such a great job, because I can't imagine that, you know, the studio or, you know, Kerry and Carlton would have allowed us the opportunity to direct if Nestor hadn't been as accomplished at it as he was. I think that by dint of already working on the show for so many years at that point, you understand the tone of it, you understand the people. We had the most, you know, wonderful crew in Vancouver that you knew you would be there to take care of you, and who were always supporting you and fighting for you. So it was the perfect environment to first direct. I think the trickiest thing was probably trying to understand, because Romero has quite a few scenes in the episode I directed that were important, and understanding his emotional place as he's upset, but you know, trying to get into his mindset as opposed to just hating him. But no, Nestor was wonderful. It was one of my favorite scenes, actually, the scene when Chick dies, and these two actors in their different spaces, these characters in their completely different worlds, and just the sorrow and the sadness on Romero's face, you know, as you were just, as Nestor said, you know, we're just so lucky to have amazing actors to get to direct.
And if I could just, and also an incredible studio and network that would allow us to do this. I don't know any other place that would allow 3 actors out of 5 series regulars direct and write on a show. I mean, it's like giving the car keys to a bunch of kids, you know. So we're incredibly fortunate on that front as well.
Vera, did having these guys direct you open any little windows in your mind about your portrayal at all, or about your view of Norma, or not?
Well, Freddie mostly directed me playing Mother, which is an entire different ball of wax. So yes, in that circumstance. And with Nestor,
All right,
I can't remember, but probably yes. Of course,
my
I'm the
cast.
one who
Now,
I'm the one who nominated him.
No,
I'm
look.
the one who put him up for it. I love the way he dissects scenes. I love the way he thinks. We have the same sensibilities. I love his sense of humor. I love what he finds, the details, the little details that, that he finds in things. God is in the details. And that's why I nominated him for, so yeah. Yes, he did.
did it make you want to do more of that work behind the camera, both of you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Just remember, you'll never top Vera. No matter what you do in your careers, you'll never top her because she directed a wonderful movie called Higher Ground while pregnant.
Amazing film.
So whatever else you may achieve, and
I can't do pregnant.
there are many things you can look forward to in your careers. She's got you beat on at least one score. Yeah. Talk about being in the writer's room, working collaboratively on a screenplay.
Yeah, it was such an interesting experience to be in there from season 4, and as you say, I think that was the biggest thing is how collaborative it was, and obviously Kerry and Carton, sketch out the wider storylines, and Kerry very much takes care of things on a day-to-day basis, and will say what is the sort of best judge in terms of knowing what fits with these characters and not. But it was lovely to get to the end of the week and see what is up on the board and realize that it is such a mix of everyone's opinions, and that there was no infighting or sense of ownership over any idea, because it did come from everyone, that someone sparks something that someone else picks up on, and it was an amazing environment to be a part of. So, incredibly grateful, as with the directing, for to be able to be allowed into the room, that sort of sacred place where few are allowed through the door.
And where you don't want to hear what they're saying about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
How many days do you shoot per episode? Or were you shooting per
8
episode?
usually. 7 in season 1.
Sometimes we went over. I mean, there are a few occasions where we would go over if the episodes are particularly long or difficult to shoot, but typically 8.
I'm going to now read some questions that were submitted ahead of time by our audience members. So don't blame me if you don't like any of these questions, okay? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to do this one first because it not only is brimming with enthusiasm, and says it's addressed to you, Freddie. It says, "Love your work, huge fan," with a smiley face, and then on top, encircled, it says, "Please pick mine," with another smiley face. So I think all that effort deserves to be rewarded. And this is
thank you.
Okay. And Yvette says, "I'm here with my young sons who are in the business. What advice would you have for young actors?"
It's hard. I never know how best to answer this question, really, except I guess than being very honest. I mean, I feel like I've been incredibly lucky myself, in terms of the things that I've been able to do, and there are, I do believe that there are many people who could have done the things that I did, and if I hadn't been there, these other things that I've done would have gone on and probably been equally as successful, maybe more so, maybe less so, but it's not just down to being, I guess the point is, it's not just down to your talent or to how much, even how much desire or drive that you put into something. I mean, it's kind of the same as the episode you just seen, where Norma says, if you believe hard enough, you can make it that way, and that idea that you can conquer everything just by belief, I guess in the end of Bates Motel, isn't proved to be completely true. And that's not to say you shouldn't fight for your dreams and want to do them, but I just think as a kid, it's probably a good idea to keep other options open at the same time too, and certainly not to take rejection as something that's a personal thing against you, or that you're not worth it as a person if you don't manage to get this job or that job.
How do you do that?
I think you do have other interests. I think people genuinely, I mean, I don't know about, you know, Nestor and Vera, but I've always thought that there are other things that I could do in life. And I think especially at a young age, that's an important thing to believe, that it's not just, I don't think I was born to be an actor, or if I wasn't an actor, that I would find myself unhappy or unsatisfied in life. It would be different, but I think there would be other things that I would enjoy. I guess that's my honest assessment of it. I mean, not to say it's not, I've had a wonderful time, but I am incredibly lucky. So that's is that a fair?
Well, that also answers my follow-up question, which is that how do you stay grounded, especially after the huge acclaim that you got for Finding Neverland, and then the high-profile part you got in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory right on the heels of that, and to go from being, you'd worked before those films, but to go from being a young working actor to a celebrated sort of quote-unquote overnight sensation, you've got to have your feet on the ground somehow. And you've given as I say, a partial answer to that. Is there more to it than that?
I think I was probably lucky as well to grow up in London, and to have my life was, I don't know, I feel like I had a normal upbringing in many ways, and that acting was something that was in addition to that, as opposed to being the focus of my life as a kid. And so, you know, when I came to the end of school, it always seemed normal that I would go on to university, because that was where life was headed, as opposed to leaving school at 16 and going and following this, you know, great desire to be an actor. But yeah, I think it's just, it's having an awareness too of what is reality, and what real life is. And also as you get older, I think you realize if you didn't have those experiences, then you are not left with very much to draw on as an actor in scenes. I mean, if you just spend your life growing up on a film set playing other parts, your kind of life experience is this weird illusion that you're constantly living. And I think having other experiences will make you a better actor, writer, director later on.
Well, that's great. This next question is for all of you. Someone who loved the show, and the cast in particular, thanks you all, and wants to know about your upcoming projects. Nestor, can you?
Well, I've been bitten by the directing bug, so I'm currently working with novelist Ted Nolte, adapting his novel to take it to the screen. So we're collaborating right now, and hopefully.
Oh, great!
Thank you.
Best of luck with that, Vera.
I wish I had my phone so I could look up IMDb right now. I've done a comedy with Christopher Plummer, and another wonderful comedy called Burn Your Maps with Jacob Tremblay. I just did a sci-fi thriller with with a lot of good people. John Goodman. I'm burned. I'll be doing Godzilla 2 this summer in Atlanta. It should be a heck of a lot of fun battling a big green lizard. And I'm cultivating the next TV project. I'm not going to talk about it just yet, but it's something quite wacky and wonderful. Yeah.
So you have no hesitation about moving back and forth from television to feature films?
No. I just go where I'm inspired. Really, I mean, it just present itself, and I'm either bitten or I'm not. And I treasure the distance that we went with the characterization. I'd never had that before. The in-depth exploration, and to work so collaboratively with my
Nestor and Freddie.
my
John Goodman.
my comrades here and the writers, and to develop it for so long was really special. I'd never had that opportunity before. So
Great.
Yeah, I'd love to do
So
it
you're
again.
busy.
Busy, yeah.
Busy.
Yeah.
Freddie, what's up next for you?
I just did this pilot, which funny enough was in Vancouver. It was like 3 weeks after leaving at the end of Bates Motel, away from the rain. You think, oh, it was nice, and then back again. But it was great. Vera was still there, so it very much felt like home. But
Because I cooked for him every night.
and it was an ABC pilot, a David Shaw drama. So it's waiting to hear at the moment what happens.
Mm-hmm. All right, we move on to another. This audience member wants to know how they thought of you for the part. Do you know?
No. I was on my year abroad. I was at university and I did Arabic and Spanish, and I was in Kuwait, and then I read it there, and we Skyped from afar, and then I went from Kuwait to Vancouver.
As one
Probably
does.
also
right?
thought, this guy can revive Charlie and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. You probably do a Psycho too.
Here's another round robin question for all of you, or for each of you. Nestor, we'll start with you. What was the most challenging single thing about playing your character?
Let's see. I think it was a blessing and a curse not knowing much about him. Sort of the notion that he was sort of this mysterious character. I didn't have a Bible on him. It wasn't anything like the sheriff whom I loved in the film. Sort of was this enigma, which was also a wonderful thing. So I would draw sort of my own backstory, and then I would pester poor Carrie with my own versions of what I thought the guy was like at the end of every season. And then the writer's room was so open to all of us going in there and pitching stories, which is another unusual thing. But so that was a blessing, and also the toughest thing as well was not knowing who he really was until I found out his backstory.
Do you tend to devise or even write a biography for a character when you play him?
I do, absolutely. I've heard other actors, I don't know about you guys, but other actors write letters introducing themselves to the actor, and then when they finish the role, I've heard them write a letter of goodbye as well. So I've heard that. I typically, if it's not on the page, and even if it is, I'll start doing a bit of a Bible just to ground it in some way.
Vera?
Leonard, I think the very thing that I hated about the role is the very thing that I loved about the role, and it was these pages and pages of monologues that would require a lot of memorization and a lot of through line, which would start from 0 to 60, and sometimes it would quickly escalate or quickly tantrum to it, and then for all the different camera angles, you got to come back down and rev your engines again and do it take after take, angle after angle, but I loved them too, a lot. Yeah.
And for you, Freddie?
I guess this season has probably been Norman taking on the mother persona. Just because it was something new, but it was great because Vera and I, it was a real collaboration in terms of coming up with that character this year. And I don't mean the character that Vera plays as mother, but that mother that Norman becomes. And we would kind of interchange out. It'd be one take, Vera would do it, then I'd do it, then Vera would do it, and we'd kind of go back and forth. And I'd never done anything like that. It was great. It was great fun, but it was also by dint of being something new, challenge to find this this character that we both felt comfortable with.
This question's for you, Vera. What was your process developing Norma Bates, and how were you able to shake it off at the end of the workday? That assumes that you did.
That's a question for my husband. Process of developing, really, I mean, the first thing was to get close to Freddie. And
Yeah, that went well, didn't it?
do you remember that? Oh man, I have stories I could tell you that are so crazy, but I can't. You know what I'm talking about. But we got close and fast, and that was imperative. I mean, you know, you try, I think, was to get rid of all inhibitions and just throw yourself into it with open hearts, open, supple hearts, which is what I was going to say to you about, you know, it's not a physical dilemma keeping your feet grounded. It's a spiritual thing. You gotta stay curious. You gotta stay supple and get as much experience as you can. Go take a French class. Go take a jiu-jitsu class. You know, go take an art class. Travel. Save your money up. Don't spend on video games. Travel. Play the video games, but travel. You know. But anyway, it's just I think that's the first thing, was because we were going to be establishing this coupling was going to be so close, so this umbilical cord wrapped around them, trying to choke out all their sadness and all the cruelty of the world. You know, we just had to like each other and love each other. And so the thing, that was the first thing, was getting to know this guy. And showing him myself and letting him into my family and having him be a part of my family. And really that was the most tremendous work for me. And then I read a lot. I mean, there's so many testimonies online. It's a very harrowing thing. I mean, spend a single day with a parent who is trying to handle their children's mental fragility or emotional fragility. It's tough. And then add on to that parent, you know, their own emotional baggage. And so you got to consider that. And what oftentimes helps me is just reading other people's testimonies and considering that.
And at the end of the day?
Good night. Asleep at the end of the day. Oh, I just wanted to sleep. Sleep. It was, especially that first couple of seasons, was tough for me. I was sick so many times. And a drink. Yeah.
So perhaps a more temperate climate might have helped a little bit.
I love misty Vancouver. I
do
loved
too.
it. I loved it. We had the great privilege of shooting second season in summer in Vancouver, which is the best place in the world to be. It's just beautiful and quite wet in other seasons, but it added to that dampness was good for the town.
And you never had to wet down the streets then for those atmosphere
No,
type
they never
scenes.
did.
No.
They never did.
Thank you all for being here today. Let's thank
you.
this wonderful
Thank
cast.
you, everyone. Thanks for coming.